Savvy Central Radio, drawing out the best from our guests with your host, Christina Nitchman.
The AME Experience is a collection of media outlets determined to bring art awareness and appreciation to the community. We cover all kinds of art, from traditional to cultural. We cover entertainment news and take you up close and personal to places of interest to visit, art, celebrities, and more. Join us for our TV show, radio show, and magazine. We are always looking for talented artists and celebrities to cover. Our goal is to raise money for grants to help those interested in a career in the arts. Art is a great way to express yourself without joining gangs or any other destructive behavior. Be a part of the movement and get inspired at AME Experience at theamemagazine.com. This is your host, Christina Nitchman. Each week, Savvy runs weekly broadcasts providing entrepreneurs and successful individuals a platform to express their dreams, hopes, lessons learned, expertise, and wisdom with the world. Our guest at the top of the hour is Miss Dré Cleveland. She shares her personal power tips to achieving success in your business. Find out more about Miss Dré at DréCleveland.com. In the second half of our hour, we're joined by Craig Swann, who talks about his inspirational journey to building his interactive music site, Looplabs. And we talk about the power of music to transform lives. Find out more about Craig and his site at Looplabs.com. Hi, Miss Dré. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you this evening?
I am awesome and amazing. How are you, Christina?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited that you can join me. Brooklyn native in the house.
Yay!
You are going to powerfully speak to our audience today, which is mostly women, and a lot of them are coaches. And you, my dear, are also a personal power coach. And I'm really excited for you to share your story with our audience because you have a very unique story that brought you to where you are today. Share that with our audience.
Sure. Well, like you said, I'm known as your personal power coach, and there's definitely a reason for that. I actually started off as a public school teacher. I taught fifth grade, and I used to gravitate, or at least the universe called the children who were quote unquote the lowest functioning, to my class. And I say quote unquote because we know, like, all children are capable of everything, and that's just a label that's put on them. And for some reason, and I now know that reason, they were always in my class. And I just started to realize over the years of working with them that I wasn't that excited about the actual teaching of math or reading or social studies and all that. You know, that is important, definitely, and important to their growth and development. But I realized I was really excited about the transformation that was occurring with them and what I was doing to get them to understand that who they were was powerful human beings that were able to accomplish anything. And the first time that I even really saw that really happen, it was such a blessing because it was early in the school year, so it can happen really fast. I had a class where pretty much the whole entire class was borderline. They were about to put them into a 12-to-1 setting, and they all were in that class because they had ones and low twos on their assessments. And that, I guess you could say, that's for people who don't go by that system. It's kind of like being like at like a 65 going downward, like the lowest you could be before you're failing. And they're fifth graders, and so they have to take a social studies test in November. Those kids gave me a run for my money when I first got them. When I tell you, they Jekyll and Hyde like easily. They from the beginning, and I don't look very old to begin with. So especially at that point, which was like years ago, about 10 years ago, and they were like, "You're our teacher, man. You look like a kid." Like they started from the door.
Kids really know how to test you.
Exactly.
You can make it with a classroom of kids. You can make it in any group.
Exactly. Yes, because they had, and even the year before that, they had 4 different teachers in their one classroom. They had gotten all those teachers to quit within the year.
Mm.
And so they had perfected that art at that moment, and they thought that they had another victim. And let me tell you, they almost did, because I got home and I cried that day. I cried. I told my mother, I'm not coming back. I don't know what this is about, but I've never seen a group of kids that are so like just disrespectful and just mean and nasty for no reason, you know. And then, you know, of course she gave me the mommy pep talk.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had to start to realize who I was going to be as their teacher. And what difference was I going to make with them? Was I going to allow that to happen, or was I going to tap in to what really mattered, which was who they knew themselves to be, and help them to change that so they could see themselves as powerful and successful. And that's what we started doing. And within a couple of months, that test came. Like I said, it was in November. And when I tell you they outperformed the top class,
nice.
They absolutely outperformed them. I might have had a couple of kids who still got low 2s. And everyone else had 3s and 4s, some high 2s.
Wow.
And, you know, from that time on, I told them, I said, well, you guys are no longer considered the bottom class. So we put a note on our door, like a little construction paper that said, this is the top class. But they performed that way. They performed that way. And we got a lot accomplished that year that was surprising to a lot of people when they looked at who was in that class. And from then on, I realized, I said, well, you know what, that's really what I'm passionate about. I want people to see how their personal power works. And that's really at the crux of everything that they could ever want to accomplish in their life. And after I stopped teaching, which was a few years after that, when I had my son, that's when I started my coaching business, and started really just doing that for people, not necessarily just kids, but I still do that with kids also.
Yeah. Well, you know what I'm loving about your story here, Ms. Dré, is that I told you before the interview that I was put into a learning disability class as a kid. I had extreme extreme dyslexia, and they didn't diagnose me until I was 16, but they had actually said they thought I was partially retarded. And it was really frustrating because I knew I understood concepts. I had good comprehension. It was just that I could not read on paper and I could not write. And nothing I could do could seem to get me ahead. And it was completely frustrating. But interestingly, the class they put me into, most of them are really misbehaving very poorly, made most of the teachers just give up and just let the class go wild. And it wasn't that they couldn't do it. It's just that no one believed in them. And so as we talked about in the beginning, before our interview, is you can be taught all the tools, but if you yourself can't believe it and have no confidence, it's just not going to be possible. You know, why do you think that happens so much in both, not only in schools, but also in general life, why we're knocked down instead of built up when we have issues?
Well, I think the main thing is that most of us are not trained to be that way. And we grow up, and it's unconscious, and I don't blame anyone for it, because we're born into this. It's not something that, you know, people are inherently waking up one day and say, you know what, I'm just going to tear you down. I'm going to, you know, like we don't think like that. It's just, we're born that way. We're born into a society of blamers and complainers.
Ooh, I like that.
People who point fingers instead of figuring out what can I do, taking responsibility and saying, what can I do to move this forward and make it better? And there are a select few of us, you know, it's more a population of the planet than we're aware of, but so many more of us are not in that space that it seems like it's so little of us who are in that space. And I think that's also one of the things that's very exciting and wonderful about being an entrepreneur, like I was telling you a little earlier, because, you know, we're here to make a difference. We're here to put our stamp on the world and make it a better place. And it's not that other people are not. It's just that, you know, we're more pointed purposely in that direction. And I think that's very special. But at the end of the day, when we're growing up and we're in a society that's constantly, you know, focusing on what's wrong with everything instead of what's right or what could be right even.
Yeah,
You know,
that's so telling. Yeah. This
yeah.
recalls for me being in corporate for many years. I would be by the water cooler every day complaining and complaining. And, as you said complainers and something else.
Blamers and complainers.
Blamers and complainers. It's true. We blame our boss. We complain. And, now when I see my ex-coworkers and stuff, and we go out for drinks, I get annoyed at them because all they want to do is complain and blame and see the negative and everything instead of seeing what's possible. And this journey of entrepreneurship, I don't know about you, but it's been a really tough journey at times, and it's really pushed me to my limits. But I've grown so much in these past 4 years that in 20 years in corporate, it didn't even come close. And
Right.
so share with our audience a little bit about you being a personal power coach, and what does that mean? How specifically as a coach do you help people a little bit more differently than, say, another coach?
Well, the power part is the most important thing. I personally believe, I'm pretty sure, I am the only personal power coach on the planet because I made it up. So, don't you love that? See, that's the great thing about entrepreneurship too. You just make things up.
Yeah, I love it.
It comes out of your mouth, and then it's created, and that's really awesome. And I'm sure that there are other people who connect people to their personal power, but it's not going to be quite that way because the power in that title is actually an acronym, and that's where I coach from. So everything that I teach, everything that when I'm coaching with people, and they're stuck in a place in their life, whether it's in their business and moving forward in their business or moving forward in another area of their life that's important to them, that might be blocking them from further success. I use those power principles, that's what we call them, as the lead conversation, because it's always running in the background. And those are like the primary tools that everyone needs to be powerful in this game of life. It's just like why my students before, they ran amok and did craziness, and why they were able to turn that around and change that so quickly, because eventually they did have principles like that. I will say like that because I didn't, have those principles defined at that time. I didn't know what specifically I was doing to get them to get to that level. I had to really think about that and figure it out. And that's how I got the power principles. But those things are running in the background. And the places where you are already successful in your life, you already have been using these principles. But if you are not consciously aware of them, then you cannot reproduce the result in the places where you aren't so successful already. Or when you get stuck, when you hit a level that, it's like that's your glass ceiling and you're trying to break through that glass ceiling. If you don't know what you did to get where you got, then you can't reproduce it. Yeah, I got you. Would you be able to share your power principles with us a little bit, perhaps? Absolutely. Oh, yay. Okay. Absolutely. Well, all of the principles, there are 5, and all of the power principles begin with one of the letters of power. So it makes it very easy for you to remember what they are and to pull them out of your bag of tricks whenever necessary. So the P is perception is key. And that really is all about, basically Dr. Wayne Dyer's quote when he said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Yep. And that one is very important. And I think that was probably the basis of what happened with my kids in the classroom. It was a matter of wholly helping them to change the way they looked at themselves as learners and as people, and their role as a student and even a lifelong student, and it makes a difference. So when we have different things that are going on in our lives and our business, and we can't quite figure out why we're stuck there, the first place to look is to actually ask yourself, well, how am I already looking at this? What we call them lies, which are the limited interpretations of everything. So not really a lie like a fib, but a lie like it's really not the truth. It might be true at that time. It may have been your personal truth, but it's not the truth in and of itself. And there are different ways to look at it. And when you open yourself up to looking at it a different way, you create space
Mm-hmm.
to see something different and move forward. And that's really what that principle is about.
Wow, that is so powerful. Look what you did. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
amazing how just that one, and I've seen this. This guy came on last year and he had been burned. I think it was last year. He had been burned over 80% of his body, and the guy next to him was burned over 70% of his body. They were in a burn ward of the hospital, and he was so positive because he's like, "This is not going to bring me down. God brought me here to do His work. I'm not completed. I'm not going to die." And he was out of the hospital in 4 months. Now he's had to deal with issues throughout the past 20 years, since he had the burns and stuff. But the guy next to him who had 70% of his body burned, he died shortly thereafter. But he was
Wow,
very
yeah.
negative, very, very negative. He was just like, "Oh, this is horrible. I'm never going to get out of this." And it was amazing. They both basically, he had a little bit worse than the guy next to him, but his perception was so like, nothing's going to take me down attitude that he did not die. In fact, he recovered way quicker than the doctors even imagined was possible, but purely based on his perception and really not allowing the negative to have power over him.
Right. Exactly. And one of the things that's really key to remember is that we just are energy beings. Everything about our lives are energetic, and negative energy is catabolic. It's very destructive. And we don't understand that. We're trying to figure out why there's so much disease around us, why is so many things going seemingly wrong around us and about us. And we never connect it to just how much negative energy we are putting, whether into the universe or into ourselves. Just speaking those words, thinking those words, being that negativity, if it's coming out of your mouth, it's already inside of your body. Because nothing can exist out of your mouth that wasn't already inside of you.
Yeah, in fact, you were thinking it first before you started saying it, and then action was the third step. So
exactly.
You think it, you say it. I mean, you think it. Wait, you think it. You say it. You do it.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. And we're not taught that. And like I said, it's not even a blaming thing, because we're just not skewed that way. That's not the world that you were born into. You didn't learn that. So there are plenty of traditions where that's the worldview that they have, and so they create powerful healers, powerful shamans. It's like you go to those areas of the world, like, wow, everybody's like this, huh? But other places, it's not quite that way. It's skewed quite the other way. And, so it's not anyone's fault. It's just, that's what it's been. Now it's time to change that and give ourselves that power so that we can create the lives that we really want to live.
Because basically, this allows you a sense of empowerment to take hold of your life, not be a victim. And then, even for myself, when I first got started and I had a mentor, she would say to me, "Are you playing the poor me syndrome thing? I mean, okay, maybe a few minutes of that if you're, feeling stuck, but you don't want to dwell on that. What can you learn from this? What is it that's not causing it to work? What are you thinking before you pick up the phone and call your potential client? Are you thinking he's not going to want to buy from me? Are you thinking I'm not worthy? I mean, what are the thoughts going through your head?" And for me, with her, she was great because she had me journal everything. And at first I thought, this is not going to work because, but it was interesting. Little by little, by writing it down, I started to notice there were negative thoughts going through my head, and kind of an awful, what do you call it? Record going over and over and over again that, kept perpetuating the results I didn't want.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And what's interesting about that? So you're hitting on another one of the power principles. One, definitely being the first one that we just talked about. Your perception. Actually, it's a couple of other ones that you're really speaking to, but also importantly, the W, which is witness yourself as a responsible person, and understanding that you are 100% responsible for your life, for the past that you've already had, for the present that you're always living into, and for the future that you will be creating along the way. And that one, there's a lot of deeper cuts to that one, but at the end of the day, the most primary is just understanding that you get to decide how it's going to go, and you get to choose how you react to whatever is going on in your life, whether it feels disempowering to you or it's already, a good thing, whatever it is,
Yeah.
But you get to decide how you're going to react. Like we can get so stuck, in things that's happened to us in our past. And I call it giving your keys away. It's like if you were driving a car, and you had if you and I were in a car and it's my car and I give you the keys to drive, if you decided to just drive us off a cliff, well, then I have to go with you.
Yeah.
There's really nothing else I can do besides go off that cliff with you.
Uh-huh.
And I've given you all of my power at that point. But then if I decide, you know what, Christina, it's fine. I love you. And I will take back my keys. Thank you. Because you are driving a little erratic right now. Let's switch. And I get in the driver's seat. Well, then I can take my car wherever I want to go. And you no longer have the power to drive me where you want the situation to go. It's just a very simple shift in your consciousness as far as, where do I want to take this? How am I going to get this situation to be more empowering to me? And not allow something else to be in control.
Yeah.
Or someone else.
Yeah. And how much does fear play a part in all of this? The negative results.
Definitely. I mean, fear, that's I think fear should be like the number one fear besides public speaking.
Yeah.
I think that should be it. Because it stops us. It really stops us cold in our tracks for many, many people. Some people are able to galvanize fear and push themselves forward, but not the general population. I will say that.
Yeah.
In my experience, that's not been the case. And that's really the thing that stops us. So even if we can put that in perspective and say, well, right now I have fear driving my car, and I need to take my keys from you. You sit in the passenger seat, and I'll drive. And just, practicing that as a mantra, because that's really what happens to a lot of people when they get stuck. It's just that fear is driving the car.
It's so interesting because sometimes, and I found this for myself, you can, as you get more and more fearful, all the possible solutions or options seem to disappear. And you see like a really small tunnel that's black and you're like, oh my, I can't go forward. But interestingly, and entrepreneurship has done this for me big time. I've had to push through major fear where it seemed like a black hole. But the moment I said, you know what, I'm just going to do it anyway. And that's become my mantra, just do it anyway. And then I find that, hey, it wasn't as hard as I thought. I actually came out quite nice, the results. But it was just pushing through. And then when I started to push through, and I have this analogy with flying, because when I first started flying, it was such a petrifying fear for me that I just decided to go for it and take a flying lesson. And in the moments that I was in the flying lesson, I wanted to jump out the window. That's how scared I was. I just felt like I'd be safer if I opened up the door and just jumped out. Of course I wouldn't. But that's how I felt inside. I just need to get out of here.
Yeah.
But you know what? I decided to stay there and push through it. And I tell people on my show before that it was the greatest experiential moment of my life for transpiring over fear, because when I let it overwash me and stopped fighting it, this amazing sense of peace and joy and bliss came over me. And I became so super present in the moment that I was, by the time I got down, I was like, sign me up for some flying lessons. And now I've done the same thing with entrepreneurship. If I feel this sense of overwhelming fear, I just go through it and the results are amazing. Yeah,
absolutely. And a great story about that too is just even how I even started doing this. When I was teaching, I was extremely shy. Let me tell you, I would if it weren't kids that I was speaking to, then I would hyperventilate talking to, if I had to stand up in front of people, I was that person. It was horrible. Even 5 people, if I had to say my name, I'd be like, literally, couldn't catch my breath. When I say that literally happened, it was a literal physical reaction that I was having. But like I said, I got really clear on what my purpose was, and that was stopping me, because how could you stand up in front of people and share a message of personal power, and you can't say your name in front of 5 people, that doesn't work very well. And so for me to be doing what I've been doing now for the past, I want to say 5 or 6 years it's been at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Not very long at all, but you know, it was a transformation. It was passing through that tunnel of fear of, you know, I don't want to. It turned out that that's the lie that I was telling. I'm not going to stand up and speak in front of people because, you know, what if they don't care about what I have to say? What if they think what I have to say is not important? You know, what if they laugh at me or they, you know, distrust anything that I say? And, you know, I'm just up here talking and it caused that physical reaction. And I really just had to suck it up, push that aside and say, you know what, I have to do this anyway. It was pushing me. The calling was pulling me to do it. But at the same time, it was a back and forth, you know, always trying to like when somebody would call my name to come speak.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, the things that went through my mind, I had to get down on my knees in my head. I didn't do it in front of people.
Okay.
But, you know, just take some real good deep breaths and pray that I'd stay alive at the end of it. And then after a while, you know, it just started getting easier. Like I would never be speaking to you this way at all a few years ago. It wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to happen.
You kind of had that feeling, Mr. A, of kind of want to open the door and jump out the plane yourself.
Exactly. And so it really is about teaching people how to create a future that wasn't going to happen anyway.
Yeah, totally.
And a lot of that is, a lot of it is what you said, is going through that tunnel and pushing through the fear without jumping out of
the airplane. Because the thing is, you know, I mean, my brain knows if I jump out, I'm dead. But the other, you know, you mentioned something just briefly really amazing. You said you felt like, you know, if I'm going to make it, if I'm going to be alive. And I actually felt sitting in that airplane, you know, safe with my seatbelt on and a very qualified pilot next to me, that I was going to explode from fear. My fear was so intense that I actually felt I might hurt myself and well, not hurt myself, but actually die in the process. But, you know, and then what is my brain telling me? Open up the door and jump out, which will definitely kill me. So fear doesn't always make sense. But it does have that sense of like, you know, this is going to totally kill me. And when you think about it rationally, you're, no, it's not, just do it. And a couple of years ago, a group of pilots asked me to come in and talk about my intense fear because they wanted me to give them the magic bullet that would help them get past their own fear to take it to the next level in flying. And I said, you know what, the only thing I can tell you, and I don't even need to do a whole talk, and that is just do it. You know, but do it in small steps. And I'm sure you talk to your clients about this. You know, I think sometimes we think when we want to accomplish any goal and the fear's too big or too fearful that we have to do it all at once and you know, be where, you know, this great speaker is on stage, you know, and they've been doing it for 20 years. We won't be where they're at, but we can start where we're at. Exactly. And give yourself permission to do more or to soar past where you are at. Because, you know, small is a figment of our imagination. Yeah. You know, and even something big could seem small, and even something small could seem big, depending on who you're talking to, you know. And I agree, definitely, there is something to be said about, you know, starting small. Okay, you know, I definitely spoke to smaller groups originally, but I didn't do that on purpose. I mean, at some point, I really just was like, there's 100 people in this audience, and I still have to speak anyway. And, you know, it wasn't like at a point where I was like, okay, now I have overcome the 10 people. And so now I will go to the 100 people. It's like, well, there's 100 people in there. Yeah. What are you going to do? Yeah. I mean, it could be 5 people, it could be 1 person. It could still be scary. Right. You know, it's all based on your, as we said in the beginning, your perception. But here's what I did when I first did my first speaking event is I wanted to copy some of the greats, you know, get this huge hotel room, fill it with 300 people, you know, put all these gadgets and gadgets, you know, get nice little paper, you know, pamphlets and stuff and pens for them. You know, it was just thinking about all the foo-foo stuff. That is nothing about the real content. And my friend said, listen, that's where they're at. If they can give away little tchotchkes to their people who show up and pay $500 for a ticket, fine. You just started yesterday. Start where you're at. Yeah, start where you're at. Put together some awesome content and have, as many people that you can get to come and join you. But yeah, so, that's where I had to, get real and be like, is this about the tchotchkes or is this about giving some good content?
Right. Yeah. And I agree with you. When it comes to the physical things, like things that you could actually physically handle, definitely.
Yeah.
And sometimes even that, I mean, because if you really wanted to do it, I've seen people, they came up with different ideas or ways to do it. And like I said, it's always just based on how you see it and your perception. Because I've seen people do, they're starting from nothing and they're able to create an event like that, but they didn't do it from what they personally had. Like they figured out, okay, I could get sponsors.
Yeah.
Other people could pay for it. I really want it to go like this. So great. You really want it to go like that? How are you going to make that happen?
Exactly.
But they, because they didn't have, there wasn't a block there. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by, the starting small or big. It's a matter of perception. You could have done that the way that you wanted to, but you would have needed other tools to make it happen, but it could have happened.
Well, one thing I noticed, and my partner brought it to my attention, he's been my biggest supporter, is he said, listen, are you trying to be like them because that is who you are? Or are you just trying to copy them because you think that's what success looks like? And honestly, I was trying to be like them because I said, that's what a good person who does speaking events does. Not like that was really a representation of me, my brand, and who I am. So, it depends on where you're at. Yes, you can make a big event happen if you want. But for me, at that moment, I was just trying to copy someone I thought was successful. And that wasn't necessarily me. But this has been so awesome having you speak about these very important topics. And I don't want us to go away today without people finding out how they can find out more about you. Get your wonderful ebook called The Power Player's Guide to Playing Powerfully in the Game of Life. Tell the audience where they can get your book and find out more about you.
Oh, definitely. Well, the book is available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, probably anywhere that books are sold online. And the easiest way, honestly, to reach me is just to go to DréCleveland.com. And that has pretty much everything about me. And, of course, on social media, everything is the Power Players Club.
Yay, this has been so cool. Well, before we end on out here, let the audience know one top tip you'd like to leave with entrepreneurs out there.
Well, the biggest tip that I will share actually just is about what we just talked about, and not letting our own lives that we tell ourselves dictate what our next step is going to be in moving forward in our businesses and impacting lives that we are meant to impact, because somebody is waiting for what we have, whether you're just starting in business or you've been in business for 20 plus years and there's another level to reach. There are people who are waiting just for you.
Yeah, it's so true.
And no one else can do it.
Absolutely, Miss Dré. It's so true. Someone had said to me recently that God would have not given us all the wonderful gifts and talents we personally have if he didn't mean that we should go into the world and use it to our best of our ability to enhance the world and help other people. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yay. Well, I want to thank you so much, Miss Dré, for coming to Savvy Central Radio. And everyone, please go to DréCleveland.com, correct?
Yep, just like Ohio.
Yay! I've been there, by the way. It's really a nice place. But I want to thank you again, Ms. Dré, for coming to Savvy Central Radio.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Christina.
Join our mailing list today by texting Savvy Radio to find out about upcoming guests and events and receive a free gift, how podcasting can help increase sales and influence in your business. And here's our interview with Craig Swann of Looplabs. Hi, Craig. Welcome to Savvy Central Radio. How are you today?
Very well. Thank you, Christina. Very well.
Well, I'm very happy to have you out here. You have extraordinary journey, Craig, building a very successful business, an innovative music internet company. It's one of the first people we've had on of this genre and this type of business. Share with our audience a little bit about how you came to creating your business and how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. It's kind of a funny story because it goes back to really the early 90s. When I was in the university system and I was exposed to what really kind of was going to be the internet. We had a lot of the backbone of what was the internet, and I was being exposed to that. And at the same time, I happened to be also a rather large deadhead. And I was sort of, touring around a little bit of the Northeast and catching a lot of Grateful Dead shows. And I kind of had an epiphany, if you will, one evening in the parking lot in a massive drum circle, just with about 100 people just all playing music together. And I just sort of had this thought of what this connective tissue that was the internet that was coming up, and this idea of this social music, and wow, wouldn't it be amazing if something like this could happen in the future? And I promptly dropped out of university after that year and said, this is what I'm going to do. And then I guess realized it was about 20 years earlier or so. But it did get me into the internet. So as soon as it was possible to have a web and it was in black and white, and I was on there and I was just learning and nonstop just on it, interacting with people and learning and sort of growing up with the culture, which led me to find myself building a big agency out in Toronto, doing a lot of interactive work. And then finally in 2001, which seems like ages ago really when you think about it now, I mean, that's before Gmail and social networks and all that, I sort of developed this first version of what's Looplabs, this idea of people making music online for free. And, it was a massive success. It was the first time anything like that had been on the web. It was the first time people could make music across the world. And what had happened was, a lot of large brands, approached me, and it really turned into this sort of monster of an idea that got a lot of momentum and got a chance to develop that with a lot of wonderful people, and really got it to the point where it is now, which is this awesome platform where we're looking to give music to the rest of the world and have them participate in something that for many is just something they've consumed. And it's a journey full of a lot of stories, which I'm sure we'll touch upon. But in a nutshell, that's kind of been my focus for the last 20, 25 years, really.
Wow. I love the age of the internet. In some ways, it's kind of brought us apart from each other. With social media, we are so into our being on our cell phone and taking pictures all over the place and selfies and all that. But on the other hand, it has brought us to places that would have not been possible 20 or more years back. We didn't have the capacity to connect the way we do today. I mean, I'm connecting with this show and even with my business and people all over the world, and it would not be possible with the wonderful world of the internet. Is it really hard to bring the music platform onto something like the internet and make it work where everyone can collaborate and make music?
I mean, certainly. I mean, so much has happened with that sort of growth in technology, and not just connecting us, but just the power of it. Certainly, you think about the power of what's, many kids today just take for granted what's sitting in their pocket, which is, they think there's more power, they say, in one of these phones than all the technology in the world and during World War II, which is a crazy thought if you think about that. Yeah. And what they're using this technology for most of the time. Yeah. So it's been a journey, but I think it was one of the things being, really early there. I pushed the envelope in the early days and just constantly, when you stick with something, I think this is true for anything that you have a passion for, mm-hmm. You develop it and you nurture it and you grow and you grow with the environment, and you sort of have an impact on the environment. I think that's true for the development of this, but it's certainly not an easy task, but it's one of those things where if you don't do what you love, you're not going to stick it through that kind of development.
But how do anyone out there who wants to start making music, how do they join Looplabs and start making their own music today? How does that work?
Yeah, it's as simple as basically create an account, and instantly, you can start interacting with people that are creating music or go into a studio. So, I mean, to try to conceptually, explain it to someone, if mm-hmm. someone's familiar with studio software like GarageBand or things like that, it's basically that in the cloud. I think the difference is that, one of the things, when you think about music, and I'm not sure, Christina, if you have a music background or not, but mm-hmm. for a lot of kids that come into it, of course, music programs are kind of going the way of the dodo, and there's not a lot of opportunities to learn music. And mm-hmm. if you think about a piano, a young child might hit all the white keys, and it's sort of having fun, and it sounds good, and then all of a sudden Pinky will hit a black key, and all of a sudden there's a dissonance, and it doesn't sound like it's right because it's not in the same key. And instantly, like when I see kids do that, they feel like it's beyond them, and they feel frustrated, and maybe music's not for them. But the beautiful thing is that, music is math, and there's a lot of things with technology you can do that would, more or less remove those black keys, if you will. So one of the things that we do is all the sounds, and we have, 30,000 plus royalty-free sounds that you can use. We automatically put them into the same key and the same tempo, so you can just conceptually grab a jazz piano and a reggae guitar and a house beat and all these things and put them together, and they just sound great. There's no effort, and it sort of takes away all those stumbling blocks that a lot of people experience, so that you're instantly making music, you feel empowered, and you feel like maybe this is something that you can do. And I think that's a big part of how we're really attracting a lot of people into this. I mean, we have 7-year-olds all the way to 67-year-olds that are they're beasts making these amazing tracks on the platform, and it's just the most rewarding thing to see people that you would never expect making music all of a sudden just falling in love with music in a new way.
Wow. Wow, this is so cool, Craig. Actually, I do have a music background. I went to the School of Performing Arts as a violinist, and it saved my butt as a child. Having a music program, at 13 here back in Virginia, I begged my parents to get me a violin, and they're like, "We can't afford it. It's crazy. You're not going to be a violinist." But they took what little money they could get together and scrounge together and got me a violin. And then a few years later, I went to the School of Performing Arts. But I went through a lot of difficulties as a kid, and having that outlet to be able to express myself during the difficult times made all the difference. And I know it makes all the difference for kids out there. And so it's wonderful that there's a product like yours where if there isn't a wonderful music system at their school, which there needs to be, at least they have an outlet in your Looplabs. That's great.
We have families that are making music together, and we get emails like that, and it's an activity that they have, and I think that's just kind of cool. I think a dad and his teenage daughter can actually sit around and noodle around and make music. It's kind of cool,
Totally.
Music is such a transformative thing. And it's one of those things, and there's been enough studies done with regards to when you do have music, inside of the school system, the fact that it uses both sides of the brain, the way it engages people, there's a direct correlation to confidence, to success, in school and learning. It's such an amazing thing, and it is sad to see it not there. I mean, it's lucky people like myself and yourself, were in a situation where we had a love for me it was guitar, for you it was violin, to get access to that. But there's just so many people around the world that just don't have access to that. And listen, they're expensive, it's complicated. Making music is kind of like the black arts for a lot of people, and I think for us, it's if we can put these tools in the hands of educators, which we're doing actively, you really have a sense of empowering people. And, we always talk about, the time that kids spend when they're on a computer. I mean, a lot of these kids are spending time on a computer at night killing people, you know what I mean? Like they're playing video games where they're just running around literally destroying, human beings, virtual human beings. And I think the opportunity to put tools like this in the hands of kids that didn't think they could do that, there's an awesome opportunity to shift that whole culture from something that's very like we were talking earlier about disconnecting and really desensitizing us as humans to really connecting us and feeling part of a global culture, which is what we are with this thing called the internet.
Yeah, I love where you're going here, and we had a guest several months back, Eric Lehman, who his whole passion is bringing teens away from violent video games. This is really great for kids to have that outlet, that's something positive other than going out there and shooting people. Tell me some of the positive things you've gotten from using music in your life that's helped you grow as a person.
It's a good question. Personally, I mean, for me, I think I know for sure I'm more of an introspective type person than more of an extrovert, and I think especially during those formative years of growing up as a teenager. We all kind of go through the growing pains, if you will. And for me, I found the guitar around that time. And I think it's one of those ways, and you touched upon it, to have a form of personal expression, to be able to have something where you can kind of go inside of yourself and have a way to communicate in a way that's very powerful. I mean, music has just an amazing way of touching, all humans. And when you can have the skills to slowly be able to express through that, I find it's very... and a lot of the feedback we get actually from people on the platform is that it's like a musical, not just a meditation, but a medication. It's very therapeutic, and it's a way to kind of lose yourself, sort of just let all the trappings of life kind of drip off of you, and just get into the moment and experience just the moment in some way. And so in some ways I find it very meditative. And I think that, I don't want to say it's an escapism, but I would say more a connection with yourself. I think it happens through music, and there's a real power in that. And I think when you do it with other people, largely to your point, maybe it's the inner hippie in me. And, I think about when we're connecting all around the world, but, I think about, we have people making music and connecting across the planet now. And I think for kids that are growing up that are desensitized largely and don't really see the world the way it is, when all of a sudden you're making beats with someone in the Middle East or a friend in Paris or somewhere, and all of a sudden something traumatic happens on a global scale, all of a sudden there's a real realization like, hey, that's my boy that makes my beats. Is he okay? Where normally that'd just be a news story a younger person might not really have much regard for. But now when you're making music and connecting on a personal way with people around the planet, I think it brings us together in a very unique way. And I think there's a real sense of power that music has to do that. So I think that connectedness that I experience on a single level, I think it's sort of exponential when you can start doing it with other people.
Those are wonderful, wonderful points. And I recall when I was a kid, I mentioned before that my mom was like, well, the violin isn't necessary. You're not going to grow up and be a violinist. Later on, I went on to do dance and singing and drove her even more crazy, more money. But I found that each of the disciplines I studied in the arts gave me something different. Like in the violin, it gave me extreme focus, which I'm able to carry that on into my professional life. And so I think it's important for educators listening in to realize that any music or art programs bring much more than fun. I mean, they bring focus and discipline and connection between each other, empathy for your fellow human being. No,
absolutely. I think it's a lesson, well learned in any discipline. It takes a while. Like, playing guitar, it's like my fingers hurt, like they're almost bleeding. Like I can barely, contort my hand to do these things, and it's very frustrating. But there's a learning and a perseverance and a discipline, as you say, that is a part of growing as a person. And I think it allows you to get to that point where all of a sudden you can express yourself, and no matter what skill it is, you have to go through that. And I think music is a wonderful way to train yourself to get to that point, because it's so rewarding when you get through that I feel like that kind of discipline to get to that point does lead through the rest of your life knowing, hey, I can get to the other side where I will be able to be fluent in this skill or express myself in this certain way. And I think it's a wonderful practice in general because it is so just instantly rewarding.
Yeah, I totally see where you're coming from, Craig. And actually, one thing I've noticed, I don't know if you have, with the age of the present technology we have and television and iPhones, it seems that often people want to take the easy route. Like, I don't want to have to do all the practice. I'd rather just get the quick, easy pill where I could just know how to play the violin or whatever. But what you're mentioning there is a sense of reward if you do work towards something, whether it's learning to play the guitar or dance or whatever, that you will gain a lot more if you take the effort to really learn it well.
Well, I think when as you're learning, when you know what's possible, you're aware of the discrepancy or the distance from where you are to what you know is possible. And I think that's part of growth, as humans. And I think it's hard to deny yourself when you're doing something and you could get there. You know where this thing is, and there's just a matter of certain things that you need to do to get there to achieve that. I think that's just being, again, in the moment and not being ignorant and caught up. Yeah. It's you have to be aware, and I think learning and growth in general is about being aware and constantly striving for more because there is more. And I think once you start down that path, whether it's you starting a business or you're playing an instrument, that becomes the drive because there comes a point where you're just letting yourself down. And that's one of the hardest things, I think, to do when you're aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that anyone could come onto your site at any age. I mean, you have some people from 7 years old to in their 70s, making music. And that's really awesome. The fact that it's never too old to get started. You've always wanted to learn to make music. Well, it's not too late. Get out there and do it today. I've heard studies that actually people who are continually learning, older people, that they actually keep their minds sharp, away from dementia, and keep themselves young and kicking.
The power of the crossword puzzle.
Yeah, right.
For sure. No, I mean, I think, like anything, everything atrophies if you don't constantly use it. And I think I think, sadly, I mean, I think we're living in a generation now where it happens at such an early age, and you see people so young already, in a sense, kind of giving up and not pushing themselves. And I think culture, isn't really working in our favor. A lot of it sort of pushes in a direction of being more looking for the easy solution and thinking that this pill will make me thin, or that this will do this or that. But it's just a scary thought. I mean, I think for a lot of people, they have to fight against a culture and a sense of media that's kind of pushing people to be in a complacent consumption sort of phase versus a much more proactive, creative state. And I really believe that that's something that the power of technology can help us get to that point. But at the same time, it's like that echo chamber. Whatever sort of chamber you're in, you get fed back the stuff you want to hear. And it's one of those crazy, scary things where, you think about even just stuff like Facebook, where it's sending feeds to you based on your preferences, where if you lean left or you lean right, or you're into this or you're into that, all of a sudden you're in this situation where it just keeps giving you back the stuff that you want to hear. You're not exposed to new ideas. You're not exposed to anything that pushes you as a person. And that's one of the scary things with technology, is that you can get very, very complacent and just comfortable. And I think that for everyone, we got to push against that and look to break outside of those sort of self-imposed limits that technology can put on us.
Yeah. And I'd even go one step further, that to really broaden not only horizons online, but offline, and go do something you've never done. Take a workshop of some activity you've never dreamed of doing, just to get yourself in a different space with different people. And that will get you to think about the world a little bit differently and approach it differently. And when you mentioned the Facebook and social media, another thing I thought about is our whole culture is really set up to live vicariously through others. We're overly saturated with the idea of celebrityism and oh my gosh, let me find out what they're doing, because you're living through their life, and it's not.
Well, wait for a virtual Kardashian to come out later.
No, run.
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, there is definitely a sense of thinking. I mean, you think about reality television to that point. The more that you see television, you see yourself or your sort of peers the same as what's on there. You're just blown away constructs of what reality are and what stardom is and what celebrity is. And it's a scary thing when that living vicariously through others makes you think that just the way that you're living, like a bunch of drunk people that are fighting on television, makes you more than just a regular person. And so it's a weird scape we're living in right now, I think, personally.
Through all of your lessons that you've had through building your business, what would be your number one, say, takeaway in your life that you've gained so far?
Really to the point you were just kind of bringing up, which is really that exposing yourself to new things. I think a lot about the growth of me, not just as a person, but for my business. I mean, I can remember being in the early days of the interactive community and going to some of the first conferences, back around, Y2K. And I remember, seeing someone, give a talk, and it was just kind of awful. And it was just like, really? Like, you shouldn't be up there. And it was that idea of like, well, maybe I could do it. And kind of breaking through the idea of, I never thought to be a speaker and giving, a talk to 1,000 people about technology and becoming, perceived as an expert or whatever. But I was like, I know I could do better than this. And it kind of strove me to do that. And I ended up not only, going back and speaking, but I ended up speaking, I've spoken around the world at, more than 50, international conferences as a result of that. And I never would have thought I would have done that. But I kind of saw an opportunity and kind of broke through the fear to do that. And even, with the books that I've written, I got into writing simply because I saw an opportunity, had never done it, but decided this is a way for me to grow, not being scared of it and just giving it a shot. And I look back over, the last 20 years, and a lot of, the growth and the success that I've had has really come from doing things that are totally out of my box, something I wouldn't consider doing, and just buckling up and doing it. And once you do one of those things, you go, oh my God, now I'm, I guess, an international speaker. And oh my God, now I'm an author. It just kind of gives you a confidence in yourself, knowing that you kind of can do anything if you just put your mind to it, even if you've got no skill in it. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that I share with people when I talk to younger kids, or just in my own life, is just to really not be afraid. I mean, fear is one of the greatest obstacles to anything. And I think once you can get past that idea of thinking that you're not good enough, or it's not in your wheelhouse, or all these things, and just try it, you'll amazingly surprise yourself. And I think I found that to be true, and I think people that I have this conversation with feel the same way.
Yeah, that you're so absolutely right. I mean, I think always pushing your boundaries, and if you're so comfortable, if you're going 6 months and you're like, I just feel so comfortable in my life, it's time to push it a little bit and see where could I grow a little bit. And I love the idea of you mentioning, okay, I saw an opportunity, I could do that. Because I think what I was told as a kid is that you should get a job, keep it forever, retire someday, and live off your retirement. And I grew up with the kind of myth that you had to stick to one thing. You get good at one thing and that's it. And really that's not necessary. You could, as you say, you can put your mind to many things and really become quite good at them.
And I think, one of the great ways to do that, and something I try to look at now is, because, like you talked about the school system, it really is just kind of like, hey, we're training you to go to work and come into the system of discipline to fulfill jobs that we need based on a system that's already in place or an infrastructure. And I think that's largely how, school came to be. But I think the idea of entrepreneurship, and I think we're living in this real cultural change that's driving people to create their own jobs and to create their own futures. I think the simple fact of just looking around and trying to see people with problems, and like just try walking for one day and just try to think, I'm going to try to look for everything that just isn't working the way that it should, or where people are frustrated. And it's amazing when you focus on something, like they say, when you buy a car, you start seeing the car you bought everywhere on the road where you never saw it before. When you just try to look for problems, it trains you to see opportunities. And then when you see opportunities, you see potential solutions. And I think that's a wonderful way to sort of to break the mold of those patterns that we might be living in, and just to look at a world with a fresh set of eyes and opportunity.
I love that. I mean, because I've heard back when I was back in high school and when I first started corporate, everything was a problem. My boss is a pain, or you come into work and you leave school and everything is a challenge, and you see everything as a challenge. Instead, you could choose to see, okay, where are the opportunities in life? Where could this take me to my next step? I love that.
I mean, it's as easy as, if you're in an environment where you can see someone that's not happy, or someone that's not socially accepted, when you start looking around and you see these things, it makes it so easy to say, all I got to do is go up to that person or give them a smile and say hello, and you become that change that can change what you're seeing. And it's sometimes so devilishly simple to do, but you have to be broken out of the box of just confusion and all the chaos in our lives to be able to see these things. And it's just these little things that can make just huge impacts that have sort of a snowball effect, I think, in our lives.
Wow, you're so spot on, Craig. I mean, many years ago when I was looking to start growing my business, I hired an energy healer, and just working with something that was really out of the box for me, really got me to see the world and possibilities in a whole new way. And it's completely true. Just step out of the box a little bit. But I don't want us to leave today without letting everyone know how they can find out more about you in particular and Looplabs.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, first and foremost, if you have never made music, please come to looplabs.com. Give it a shot. You might actually amaze yourself and maybe set yourself down an entirely new path for the rest of your life. I know it's happened to a few people. And certainly, I love just connecting with anyone. If for any reason someone got something out of this or had a question, Craig at looplabs.com. Always love speaking to as many people as possible. With regards to the future, it's just, Christina, this path of just wanting to continually opening up these tools and try to connect as many people as possible. We're doing wonderful work with, some orphanages through Central America. We're getting more and more into the school system. And, that's just all I'm focused on. And if anyone has any interest in music whatsoever and thinks they want to get involved on any level, we just love to talk to anyone about that. So don't be fearful of sending an email and saying something. Craig at looplabs.com. Feel free to spread it around. I'm an open book.
Fabulous. Well, I want to thank you again for being an open book today and sharing all your gifts and wisdom on Savvy Central Radio.
Absolutely. I can't believe half an hour just flew by. That was a wonderful conversation. I enjoyed that thoroughly, Christina.
So did I. Thank you so much, Craig.
Thank you very much.
Join our mailing list today by texting Savvy Radio to find out about upcoming guests and events and receive a free gift, how podcasting can help increase sales and influence in your business.
Savvy Central Radio is home to over 100,000 listeners per month globally and runs in syndication on 8 AM and FM platforms, including iHeartRadio and 6 podcasting platforms. To find out more about our paid sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest and find out how we can help you get your message out to the world, Call 718 area code 713-2289 or email at savvycentralradio@gmail.com.